What's up, everybody? This is Diego.
This is Carlos.
And we're Caile Gueyyy. We're finally back.
Back, ready to go.
I know, dude. That grunt sounded like...
Just like adjusting yourself?
Yeah, bro.
And you bend down to get something?
If you know me right now, I'm sitting on my little seat cushion.
Yeah, man. That's how it is.
Once you hit 30, your back is like, oh.
Yeah. It's the compression, fool.
Oh, yeah.
The spine is.
You know, I was stretching today, dude. But I also have like my little targeted massage gun.
Yeah.
I was just feeling like a pinch on my lower left side.
But I feel like my back problem, it's funny how we're talking about back problems. Real quick, though, I just want to thank Senor Barragan last week just for coming through. One thing I was thinking about, too, is he made the hour drive to come to us. And then I was remembering, I was like, damn, he had to make an hour drive back.
Yeah.
Like 2-hour commute.
You know, so huge shout out to Senor Barragan on Instagram and on TikTok.
Definitely check out his episode.
Yeah, definitely check it out. It's coming out soon. And like,
if not, it might be out already by the time this one comes out.
And that leads to like a few life updates. Yeah. You know, like if you don't know, Carlos and I are now in the IE. We went from LA to the IE. We're IE boys now.
I've been out here since 2021, kind of post-pandemic. A lot of our like house searching was in like with masks and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it was when I remember you had to make like appointments. I'm sure you still have to do that now, but there wasn't a lot of open houses.
Yeah.
If there was an open house, it'd be like rare, you know, where there would be an open house. But yeah, masks were required back then when we were doing our house searching.
Damn. No, but I guess it kind of goes back to like how long we've been inactive, you know. So we're very excited to be back. You know, thank you to our faithful listeners that are still tuning in, that are following us on our Instagram page at Caile Gueyyy. Yeah. You know, we're very lucky to continue to have your support. You know, but today we wanted to go ahead and do this episode, you know, to kind of just welcome ourselves back into podcasting.
Yeah, basically.
You know, we took a few significant breaks, you know, but it's just part of the grind. Like I was telling Carlos the other day, like I think when you're like a first gen, you know, you're kind of just, I need to accomplish this, I need to accomplish that. And like, just to be fully transparent, like the time that we were on hiatus, it was just like I had graduate school. Yeah. After graduate school, landing that job. Yeah. After landing that job, performing well at that job. Yeah. No, you know, it's kind of just those metrics that you say yourself as a first gen, you know, but I think now we have time to slow down and kind of just engage in what we love to do, and that's connecting with you all. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I'm excited to be back. And then when we think about when we first started off in 2020, bro.
Yeah, definitely. You know,
I remember we would make appointments with each other before I would go to your house, and I remember the first couple of times wearing masks to your house. Damn, that's crazy. Yeah,
we were outside. I think the first episode we were outside in front of Rico's house,
and we were just commenting on the neighborhood and what we were seeing. But from there up to basically recording into Rico's house in your room, and then eventually when I moved out, did a couple things I think in my garage. Yeah, and now that you have your house. Here in the Inland Empire, you kind of have a room to yourself, a little studio room, and it's pretty legit, bro. I think it's coming around.
Thank you, bro. Thank you. I appreciate that. And for those of you that don't know, the IE is it stands for the Inland Empire.
The Inland Empire, yep.
You know, but today we're back, and Carlos has a few questions that are going to go ahead and guide the conversation today.
Yeah, and I think because me and you have been discussing like where we want to take this, and I think. And this is Senor Barragan's inspiration, right? Coming up with a vision and a mission to what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And I remember when we started off, kind of like our big motivation. It's funny because we were like we were already I was in my graduate program. I think you were pursuing applying to a master.
Yeah, definitely.
Applying. And I remember our big thing, our motivation was kind of just interviewing different people in the community and seeing what am I trying to think of? Kind of like their drive, what it is that they're doing right now in that moment and how they got to where they're at now. Yeah. And it's just more a learning experience, right? Interviewing people who you wouldn't think would be interviewed, and it's kind of giving them then the space. Yeah. Not that we have the biggest space, but right, that's maybe one of our motivations to get to that point, which is just interviewing people who we find interesting and then finding out what we can learn from them just to kind of grow. Just our understanding and of different careers, because a lot of the times you hear kind of just the stable careers, and we kind of want to move away from that and talk to people and talk about different types, of careers. And so I think because it's kind of a new era in our podcasting journey, I thought we would begin with us.
Yeah.
Right. And so some of the questions that I have is a lot of how we started off, what what motivated us, and
like
what
a reintroduction.
Us. A reintroduction,
but also an update.
An update, for sure.
I like that.
And so one of the first questions that, I'll be honest, I ChatGPT'd a bunch of questions. It's crazy where AI has gone. But one of the questions is, the career that you currently have, is that what you envisioned for yourself? Going back to when you were in high school to where you're at now, what is that, 10 to 14 years later?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's been over 10 years since I graduated high school. I graduated high school in 2012.
12, yeah. And I'm 2011.
And I'll be honest, we never even had a 10-year reunion.
I know.
I guess the movies lied to me.
Yeah.
No, but it was during the pandemic, though.
My 10-year reunion was 2011.
Which was during the pandemic,
2011,
right?
My bad. 2021.
Yeah, which is right in the height of the pandemic. So
I do remember some, because I kind of stayed away from social media like for a long time. And then I remember just kind of going back into it a little bit and seeing kind of a couple of rumblings from some of the people that I went to high school with about like a 10-year reunion, but it never really happened, and I guess I never really saw anything. Not that I don't know if I would have gone or not, like if there was actually something set up, but yeah, I think the people who were their 10-year reunion was 2020, 2021, 2022.
Yeah.
That was like a very funky period.
Yeah, definitely.
Because of the pandemic.
I would have liked to have gone, but I understand that like people were going through the pandemic and that impacted everybody differently.
Yeah, it's considered a global trauma, fool. It's a trauma for everybody.
And I believe it, bro. Like, but I think going back to your question, for those who don't know, I'm like a college counselor. So in high school, I actually never saw myself doing that. No.
Right.
But when I'm a community college student, and then I transferred to like a 4-year university, and that whole process is what inspired me to be a college counselor. So everything after that experience, it's what I did envision for myself, like going to graduate school, getting that master's, because part of that career journey is understanding that you need a master's to enter that career. So like I was telling the other day, like I love my job. Like,
yeah,
you get me? I compare it to when I was at Carl's Jr. and I personally, it wasn't for me. Like Carl's Jr., right. I used to walk in and go to the restroom and just be like, damn, like I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
And the highlight of my day every day is when I'm at work, like talking to students, like learning about them, getting to know them. Like that's definitely the highlight of my day every day.
And I think for myself, and it's funny, sometimes I even tell my students this, because sometimes they'll ask like, how did you become a school counselor? And it's funny because I didn't know that school counselor was an actual career to be pursued until like my 3rd year of college. And I think very much like you, I also didn't really envision this career for myself. It wasn't until I got into college and started working for the EOP program because I was not an EOP student. I actually didn't even know what EOP was. Yeah. Right. And for those of you who don't know, it's the Education Opportunity Program. It's a program for first-generation, low-income, historically disadvantaged youth. And that mission may change a little bit, like across the Cal States. And I know that the community colleges have something called EOPS for, to provide resources for students who fall under that demographic. And so in college, I had a job as a custodian. My second year, sorry. My second year of college, I actually had a job as a custodian for like about a year and a half. And then into my 3rd year of college, that's when I applied to the EOP program. And that's actually thanks to my cousin. He was on the website for Cal State Northridge, and he was looking at different job opportunities, and he found peer advising. And so that was through the EOP program. So the EOP program was hiring undergraduate students to do advisement. And we worked under an actual professional advisor, so someone who would give you your classes, your educational plan at the Cal State level. And so they had peer advisors. And so what we would do is we actually would sit down with students. We would look at their high school classes to see if they had any college credits. And then basically we would give them their first semester classes. And we primarily worked with undecided students who their major was obviously undeclared. And then they were also only freshmen. So we only worked with freshman students. Mm-hmm. And so we worked with the whole undeclared population, and that small part population was the EOP students. And I feel like those were the students when I worked with them, because we worked closely with them. We would go sometimes to the comida. Sometimes we would go to their orientations. Yeah. Because they had something separate just for them. And that's when I realized that I like doing this. Yeah. Right. Because a lot of the times we would have students and they would come and ask us. And by then I was already into my third year. So I kind of already knew a little bit more about what financial aid was, why it was important to meet with your advisor every single semester, even though it's not required. And just seeing a lot of students come in from high school and then asking them these questions too, at that point, I felt like, man, this should be common knowledge. Like everyone coming in should know about financial aid, what grants are, what Cal Grant is, Pell Grant, like just the differences, all those little nuances. And I started to ask questions like, who's responsible to provide this information for students? And that's when I started to kind of do a little bit more digging around and ask questions. And school counseling. School counseling has 3 domains, right? Yeah. Academic, college career, and social emotional. And the college career aspect of it is that the college prep, planning for post-high school. So community college or Cal States or UCs, especially here in California. And then that's when I realized that's what I want to do. Yeah. I want to be a high school counselor to help students learn this information so that they're better prepared, right? I don't think we're ever going to hit that perfectly, but whatever I can do to provide that information for them, that's what I basically strive for.
No, and that's amazing, dude. Like, and it also kind of goes to show that, like, not goes to show, but it kind of trips me out because maybe at some point we crossed paths, but we just didn't know who we were. Because, like, you say you graduated 2011, right? I graduated 2012, and I did go to CSUN. Like you, I went to CSUN for like a semester, but I went from summer to fall 2012. So I did EOP in the summer. I was doing commuter bridge, and then I did it in the fall, which is the semester that I dropped out. And again, like that program was just very transformative, like, because it taught me the skills that I needed to succeed, but where I was at that point in time in my life, I wasn't ready to implement them, but I always referred to them as like, oh, like I had heard it from them first. Yeah. And then when it comes to wanting to work in education, I worked at Linwood High School. Oh, yeah. I worked at Linwood High School.
Did you intern or you had a job there?
I had a job there. Yeah. I had a job there, and that was before like I met you. Oh. So then I was at Linwood High School, and I'm from South Central, right? So like Linwood is part of like Sela, which is like the southeast LA part. Area, yeah. And after that, that's when I went to like a different job, and then that's where I met you, who went to Linwood High School, who was also going to CSUN at the time for their master's program. But you're also like, quote unquote, like, at least at UCLA, we call it like a true Bruin when you do your undergrad and your master's at UCLA. You're also like a true Matador, right? You did your bachelor's and your master's.
And my master's there, yeah, for sure.
So I think the stars aligned. Yeah, if that makes sense, right? Because there was a lot of ways we could have crossed paths, but we didn't till that point. Yeah. In Educare when we were.
And that's crazy. I feel like our lives really ran parallel, bro. Like same age, just kind of neighboring, I guess you can say, neighborhoods. Yeah. But not so much.
Because you were also going to ska shows, bro. Yeah. Yeah. Like because I went to a few ska shows when I was in high school, just because one of the homies, Mario, he was into ska, right? But before that, like, there was some girl that we were talking, and she was like, come to the show, whoop-de-woo, Yeah. But South Central had a very active ska scene, bro. Yeah, for sure. Because when I was in high school, from like 9th grade to senior year, like, ska was so huge, bro.
That scene, yeah. And you know what else was big during that time? Hardcore music. And ska music. Because you'd go to a lot of shows where it was ska/hardcore. Yeah. And I remember you would have a hardcore band kind of open up, and then it goes into a ska band, like completely different, like sounds. And then that would just be, the night for the next 3 hours, just like ska hardcore.
And I think during that period, like, we're millennials, so I think during that period we had like a lot of scenes, like pockets of scenes, because at that moment you also had like the jerking scene, the shuffling scene. You also had like the raving scene that was coming up, bro.
The raving scene.
Like EDC was still in LA at that point. Yeah. Up to like 2012 or 2011 at the Coliseum. You know, so like all those scenes were coming up, and then you also had like the paisa scene, right? Like going to the shows with the banda.
What was the other word they say? Chuntis?
Chuntis was different though. Chuntis was a diss.
Chuntis was different. Yeah, it was a diss.
Chuntis
was more derogatory.
Yeah, Chunti was a diss, you know.
I do remember all these, you know, different terms and labels, and I feel like I never really dabbled into those other scenes. I knew those scenes were around, but I think once I found ska, there was something about it. One of the first bands that I heard was Ocho Calacas and Viernes 13, and those two bands, something about them just spoke to me, and I kind of just been stuck with them ever since, you know.
No, yeah, and I think that's I think that's something else that like you and I had talked about. Like I think you had mentioned like how ska can be political, and some of it is, and that's the ska music that I like the bands that mention like political messaging or like the struggle of the working class. Yeah, you know, like Ocho Calacas is one of them, like La Pobresca, and stuff like that. Skankers. Yeah, and we've seen them like a few times live, you know, and I think but when I was in high school, like that wasn't where my mindset was. Yeah. You know, so,
like in political activism.
Yeah, like it was, you know. And I think college is what introduced me to understanding that, because I didn't even know about what the fuck a Chicano was, bro. Like, to be honest, like, because in South Central, it was just very much like, oh, like you're Mexican, you get me, or yes, you're not, you know. So, but when I went to college, like, oh, well, you're the son of Mexican immigrants and you're born in the U.S., like you're a Chicano. Yeah. But then it was also that other aspect of like, well, if you're not social politically active, you're not really a Chicano, right? And again, like the definition changes depending on who you ask. But I did take I took a few Chicano study classes when I was in community college, and then also at UCLA. And I think that's also that helped me find that pride in returning to education, because education as a self, it does act like an institution that can create access or could create barriers to students. You know, and I think that's something that definitely impacted me. You know, and I always tell friends, like my other friends, where it's like, I remember when I was at UCLA, they asked me like, why are you here and why aren't your friends here? Like, and I was a commuter student. Yeah. You know, so
when you were going to UCLA.
So I was like driving from South Central all the way to fucking UCLA, and I would see like the disparity for like the communities change, right? And they were like, one of the professors was like, why are you here and why aren't your friends here? And in my head, I was like, I'm not smarter than my friends from South Central. It's just life dealt us like different cards. Yeah. You know, like one of the friends, his father passed away, so then he had to become the breadwinner. One of the other homies at the time, like when applying to college, he found out he was undocumented and things like that. He kind of just disengaged, you know, and it kind of just goes back to having that support network that would help you through those struggles, you know. And I was able to find that in community college, you know, because my parents were also like in the beginning stages of their separation at that time, you know. So then that's what pulled me away from like Northridge and took me to a community college that was much more closer to home, so that I can continue helping my mom.
Balance both things.
You know. And I think that's where we are now with like Caile Gueyyy. Like again, like going back to what Caile Gueyyy means is like, for those of you that don't know, like Caile Gueyyy is like, Caile is like pull up.
Pull up.
Yeah, pull up. Like that,
you're invited to the table.
Pull up. Yeah. And Gueyyy is kind of just like a bro. Yeah, bro. Like bro, like fool, like you know, like, so it's kind of just like inviting people to have that conversation, to learn from one another, you know, but to also highlight people that are working towards improving like the social working and emotional conditions of like the Latino community or like any part of the respective community, you know. And that's something that today we're happy to be able to do, like between Carlos and I. Yeah, for sure. You know, just because you can learn a lot from one another, like through conversation.
And I think that's what kind of like has kept me going. And, you know, going back to the original thing where like our lives we're running parallel. And I feel like there were so many opportunities for us to eventually bump into each other. But, and who knows, maybe we did bump into each other. We just didn't know each other, you know what I mean? But eventually when we were working in South Central at that one high school, that's kind of like where our lives kind of met, right? And I think that's where this idea of like, I guess you can say Caile Gueyyy, because then starting to ask you questions, you were asking me questions. And I feel, at least for the longest time in college, just always feeling the effects of in-group, out-group, and then just always feeling like, you know, it is weird, but this feeling of not really feeling like you belong in that, you know, in that space. And so you work through that, right? As best as you can. I did 5 years in Cal State Northridge, and then I did 2 years in my master's program. And even in my master's program, there was still this feeling of, I was actually watching this TikToker where they were talking about how imposter syndrome is a myth.
Yeah.
Not a myth. I don't know what she, I'll go back.
It's not
I'm not going to say a myth.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. She had mentioned that it's not a internal problem. It's a systemic problem.
And I agree with that. Like that does make sense. But when you're in it, obviously I'm not thinking that far.
Yes and no.
Yeah. So now I'm thinking critically, like, you know what, that is true. Like I'm feeling this imposter syndrome because of the system that I'm in right now. And the issue is, it really isn't with myself, but it's with the system itself, right?
Yeah.
And that makes sense. But just kind of putting my brain back into my master's program and sitting in those classes, I did have that feeling of like, how did I even get here? Like, what was I just allowed to, to be part of this program just because they needed to meet some sort of quota or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
But when I met you, and me and you started to talk, and the fact that we were working with students who are going through a lot of different challenges and struggles, me and you would debrief a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where the critical thinking, where the application of everything that I was learning for 6 years in college was now starting to be applied, and working with students and applying the knowledge that I got, and then talking to you and debriefing in a way that felt comfortable, right? I didn't have to use, these terms and labels. We can just talk like genuinely about the problems, the issues, the social issues.
And one thing that I liked about that was that we approached it through different perspectives, but it converged, right? Because you in your undergrad you studied like psychology.
Yeah, psychology.
So like the individual.
Yeah, the individual. Yeah, and I took a couple of sociology. I took some child development classes, but it's interesting because like my partner, she majored in Chicano studies. You've taken some Chicano studies classes, and I only took like one class in Chicano studies. Yeah, right. But the bulk of what I was learning was just more psychology. Yeah. Right.
But I think that's where we converge well, because like I majored in political science. And I majored in the aspect of like the institutions and how they shape society, because I took sociology, Chicano studies, psychology as well. And I think where I'm confident is the way that these institutions can impact an individual and society as a whole. And how you mentioned it is like how the individual goes through his experiences in society. Right. And I think that's where we converge well in education, because you have both of that, right? Education as an institution, but also how does an individual navigate the feelings that they experience. And I think it goes back to that TikTok video that you were mentioning, where it's like, I agree with that creator. Yeah. Because I think it is a systemic issue that makes people experience that.
And we need to start asking those questions. Yeah.
But I also don't want to dismiss the people that do experience it, because I didn't experience it in my undergrad journey when I transferred, bro. Because I remember when I transferred to UCLA, they were like, "Oh, in orientation, don't cry when you get your first F." In my head, I was like, "Man, who the fuck are you, bro? Like, the fuck, like, because I worked my ass off to be there. Like, I only had 1 C in college, in community college. You get me? And at UCLA, I graduated magna cum laude. Wow. But because I had learned all the skills already in community college to help me succeed at UCLA. So when I heard that, I was like, in my head, I was like, you don't know who the fuck I am. Like, don't come at me with that. Like, and I didn't experience imposter syndrome like that, because I had developed the skills to make me feel a confident student. Like, I know if I can put in the work, I know if I can ask for help, I know if I apply myself and have those conversations with my counselor, my advisor, to figure out what can I do. My instructors that were taking advantage of office hours, right? Like I took all that to UCLA. And I remember meeting an advisor at UCLA, and I was like, hey, I was going over my degree advisement report, and it's saying that I'm just missing this class, like, and that class is offered in the winter. So if I take it, I'm done. It was, oh, you already have it all figured out. So I finished a quarter early.
And you would go anyway, just to get that confirmation from the advisor. And that's a skill that you learned eventually.
Yeah, and I finished a whole quarter early at UCLA. Wow. You get me? So for me, like, I finished in March, and I just had to wait for like July for graduation.
Yeah, for the ceremony.
But it was just those skills that I learned at community college, but also that aspect of not having felt that I wasn't good enough, because I had already gone through that when I dropped out. Yeah. But the EOPS program helped rebuild me back into a student that knew how to ask for help, that knew, because it's okay not to know. Like, that's what I realized. Like, it's okay not to have it all figured out. But you should develop the skill of letting somebody know. Like, hey, I have a question. Like, I just don't know how to go about this. And that's perfectly fine. But when I was at Northridge, I was embarrassed of that, because I felt that I was disappointing
and
the
EOP
program.
Now, you know, and it's funny. I think this is why me and you kind of can go on for we can go on for because that was just the first question that I had in my list of questions, which I feel like then kind of goes into the next question that I have. What were some of the early challenges, you know, in pursuing the career that you're pursuing now? And by challenges, I mean like academic challenges, social challenges, just.
I think in regards to like the career, like you need to get a master's.
Yeah.
You know, so when I was applying for master's, like I didn't know how.
What about your undergrad?
For undergrad, like one of the what were the challenges?
Because I guess you can say, for example, for me, right? I guess just an idea of the question that I'm trying to get at. Like for me, I think you brought up an important point, which was the feeling of embarrassment to ask questions or to not know something, right? And I remember early on for me, the first few classes that I got, I had to take Math 93, which is basically not college, it's high school algebra.
Yeah.
Right. And in Cal State Northridge was a Math 92 class, Math 93. And depending on how you did in high school, whatever highest level math you took, and if you took any extra advanced math classes, it would kind of place you into your level of math at the college level. And then there was also the math placement test that you would have to take as part of, like, I guess you can say your onboarding, like part of your
entrance.
Yeah.
Requirements.
You know, so you had to do an English placement test and a math placement test. And so I placed Math 93. And so when I was taking Math 93 and I was seeing that a lot of the math that they were going over in the class, it was basically high school level math. And I remember just immediately freaking out. I was like, I am not going to pass this class. I remember the first lesson going in there and just seeing a bunch of algebra. And my relationship with math has always been this struggle, bro. And one of the early challenges, just going back to the question, was just learning the skills on what it meant to be a student. Because being a student, that is an identity in and of itself.
Exactly.
And what does it mean to be a student? And sometimes when I'm working with students and I'll ask them, like, what does it mean to be a student? Like, if I were to walk into the class, right? And let's say the student I'm working with is the student who struggles academically. And I walk into the classroom and I'm just kind of looking in general at the whole class. Do you feel like when I look at you, you would be someone who I would think is a student? And if it's a student who's struggling, they'd probably be like, no, I'm not, reflecting student qualities, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, what are those qualities, right? And I'll ask students, and some of the things that I get back is that, I'm like taking notes, or I'm annotating, or I'm raising my hand and asking questions, right? These are the qualities of what it means to be a student. And so in college, unfortunately, I lacked a lot of those skills, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know how to take notes. I didn't know how to kind of read something and try to really comprehend what it's saying. I didn't know that you can, if you don't get it the first time, it's okay to go back and read it again to understand and learn it, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the first few challenges that I had was I failed my Math 93 class, and I was also taking, back then it was called remedial English. I took astronomy.
Was it like English 113?
114. Okay. Yeah, because there was 113, 114, yeah. And then college level English. And the thing about these like remedial classes was they were not worth credits. These classes, you would take them just to place into college level math, and the college level math would be what's worth towards your degree. Mm-hmm. And so I failed the class, and I remember meeting with an advisor because I think it was a freshman requirement. Like, as a freshman, you're supposed to meet with an advisor, but then after that, you're not required to anymore. I remember I met with them, and they asked me about my grades and what my plan was for psychology and what I was thinking as far as like what my educational plan. And then when they looked at my grades, they said that, you failed math, right? And I was like, yeah, but I can just take it over again. I was like, yeah, sure, you can take it over again, but you have to understand that there's a policy called being stopped out, right?
Yeah.
So if you fail your remedial classes, you run the risk of now having to leave, take the class in the community college to then be eligible to return. And I think this is the part where I don't remember it quite correctly, but he mentioned something about my financial aid. I had full Pell Grant. So I had max Pell Grant, and I had university grant. So it covered basically my whole tuition. And I did get $2,000 back in financial aid money. So I didn't have to pay for tuition because I was receiving the Pell Grant and the university grant. And so he said that I would have to pay tuition, and tuition at Cal State Northridge was $3,500, and that to me was like egregious amount. I said, there's no way. And the anxiety that hit me, and the realization that I have an opportunity here. Yeah, it hadn't hit me up until that point. Yeah, and it had been a whole semester, and it was until January, February when the second semester started, and I was like, wait a minute, like I have to turn things around. Mm-hmm. My relationship with failure, and I think that's what's important, because this is also something that I work with my students, your relationship with failure. Like, what does it mean to fail at something? What does it mean to not accomplish something, right? And oftentimes we're hard on ourselves when we don't get things the first time. And so in January, when we started the second semester, man, my whole life became Math 93. Yeah, I was in office hours. I was in the library studying. I was looking stuff up on YouTube. I was taking notes. I got to the point where I started reading how to study better. And I remember I was looking top 10 ways to study. It's like create an ambient environment and then always use that environment every single time. Yeah. Right. Or in a class, pick a seat and never move from that seat. Be in that seat the whole semester, because there's associations that you create when you're learning something. Yeah. And it's easier to recall information when you keep your conditions similar or the same, and it helps with memory. I remember creating your own tests. That was a big one for me. Once I started to create my own math tests based on the study guide, I would see the study guide, like, okay, this is what we're learning, factoring. Okay, I would make my own tests on like a factoring test with like 15 problems. And so I would just do that over and over again, and hours on end. Yeah. Hours on it. And I remember when it clicked for me where this works was at the end of the semester, the professor said, all right, right before we take our final, I'm going to let you guys review for like 15 minutes if you guys need to look at notes and stuff. And if you want, you can come up to me and I can tell you what you need to get on the final to ensure that you pass the class. Yeah. So yeah, students were going up like, what do I need to get on the final? You need to get a 70. You need to get an 80. You need to get a 40, whatever it is. And I remember I was like, okay, I was nervous. Yeah. Even though I knew, like, I know I'm going to pass this test. I've studied my ass off. I remember I had my notebook and I stood up and the professor looked at me and he was like, and for the audio people, he looked at me, closed his eyes, and he said, you don't need to come and check. Basically telling me you can fail this test and you would still pass the class, right? And that's where, like, I got this vote of confidence. I took the test, got 100% on it. That's when my identity as a student started to realize itself. I was like, it's not that you're born being a student. We hear that often. We're like, I'm not a student. Like, high school is not, education is not for me. College is not for me. It's not for anyone. You have to work at it. And that was one of the first challenges, which is just the identity forming that I can be a student. Yeah. You just have to work at it.
No, yeah. And I like that you mentioned that, because I think when you form that identity, like, you go through periods of self-reflection where it's like, you have to ask yourself, what am I not good at? Yeah. Because I need to understand what I need to work on, but first I have to accept, like, hey, I need to go to math tutoring because I'm not good at the moment at math. Yeah. And I remember taking a statistics class, and the first exam, I got an F. I was like, what the hell? It was my first F, dude. And it just shocked me. I was like, whoa, like.
I guess what was, just that question, what was your, sorry to cut you out, but like, what was your relationship with failure then? Like, if you failed at something, where did your brain go? Where did your feelings and your emotions go to if you fail at something?
Like, I remember having a professor that was like, it's only failure if you don't learn from it. You get me? And something that I tell the students that I work with today, where it's like, something they're like, I'm just going to take the L. I was like, it's only a L if you don't learn from it. Like, but it's a lesson. You get me? Like, what you've learned currently in this class, when you repeat it, apply it, but also know what areas you need to work on. Whether it's if you knew that, like, topic A, B, and C is something that you were struggling with, like, talk to the professor, like, find out what you need to do to make sure you're able to grasp that content, whether it's going to tutoring and things like that. So for me, it was more like, I know I needed to put in the work, because it's like, I'm not stupid, but it's obvious if I'm going to fill in an exam that I didn't study for. Like, how do I expect to pass that out? That's not who I am as a student.
Did you always know that though?
Yeah. Like, I realized it in the sense of, like,
Like even in high school?
I used to write my notes down like standards.
Yeah.
Like I would write down physically the notes. And
in high school?
No, in college.
In college.
In college, I would write down the notes, and then I would.
Well, I guess when did you learn that? Like, it's important to take notes and write them like standards, right?
When I entered community college, because I knew I had to put in the work. Like I had dropped out from a Cal State, so I was like, okay. Like I got to put in effort. To work my way back up there.
You feel like going back to that question? What were some of the early challenges that you faced? Was it that?
Is the realization that it's not easy, dude. Like
and when you dropped out, like something happened, kind of like in your brain, where like.
Yeah, because man, I was like, oh, I'm a failure, bro. Like, I'm a failure, but I know that it's because of the little effort I gave it. You know, in the sense of like, I stopped going to class. Yeah. Like, there was stuff going on at home, right? But when I went to community college, like, I spoke to a counselor, and they saw me first who I was, which was Diego, going through his parents' separation, and then you're a student. Yeah. And then they were like, you know what? Like, with priority registration, you can go ahead and work and have your classes, build your classes like either Monday, Wednesday or Tuesday, Thursday. Yeah. And I wanted to work. And I remember sharing that with the counselor. And he was like, well, if you have priority registration, build your classes Monday, Wednesday, you have Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday to work. And that's a schedule that made sense in my head. Right. You know, but because the counselor saw me first as a person who was going through these challenges, and we were able to connect at that point and see how I can also be a student, right, going through these things. That's what transformed my life.
And it's really going back to the identity development of like student is a part of your identity along with the other parts of your identity.
I added it. Yeah. You know, I added it as part of my identity. But it's important to understand too that like external circumstances are going to impact you. Yeah. Right. And I think that's what that counselor made me aware of. Whereas like I know what you're going through. Let's factor all that in and how you take classes here. Yeah. And
because then it's like the compartmentalization of, it's the whole thing where like when you go to work, right? Yeah. You know, you kind of leave the personal and then being able to do a good job, right? When you go into the classroom, it's kind of like I'm here to study, and those problems that I'm dealing with, technically they're still going to be there, and I'll worry about that because I don't have any control over that right now while I'm sitting in this classroom. And that's hard to do when you really are going through something that you're struggling with, and it's like you're thinking about it in class, and it's like, how do I even concentrate on this? And then you got to go home, and then you got to figure out all these little factors, you know.
Yeah, because at least like if I had my full schedule Monday and Wednesday, at least on Monday and Wednesday, I can just focus on being a student. Yeah. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday,
I'll deal with the other stuff.
I'll deal with the other stuff. Like
Tuesday, but when it comes to Monday, Wednesday, I'm a student.
Yeah, I'm a student. This is all I focus on, and then I'll deal with the other stuff like the other days. And that's what helped me create a schedule that balanced for me, because I was a commuter student, but I was also a working student. I was working like 20, 30 hours a week. Yeah. You get me? And I was being a full-time student. I took winter, I took summer. And I remember working at like at Carlos Jr., then at GNC. And then when I transferred out, I remember working on campus. And like I was always a working student, you know, but understanding that I can be, if I take the initiative, I can build my schedule that works for me. Yeah. Right. Because it's understanding your registration date and time too. Yeah. What classes do you need to take? And when are you able to register for them? Yeah. You know, and then like that, I can create a schedule that worked for me. And if something was different, I can go back to my employer and be like, hey, like, instead of Monday and Wednesday, I can work Tuesday, Thursday. Yeah. Or I can vice versa, right? Like, so that's when I adopted like that identity of a student. But I also had to make sacrifices where like my social life, I was like, oh no, like I have to study, because I would write down my notes like standards. I would read them, and then I would record myself like reading them. So when I was stuck in traffic, like I would listen to them.
Listen to the notes. Yeah.
And then when work was slow, I would read my notes. Yeah. You get me? So like I hustled through all of it, bro. Like it was just, I knew what I needed to do that worked for me. Like I found that formula that worked for me.
And in high school, it's funny because when I'm thinking about,
I didn't even fucking high school, bro.
Yeah, I didn't.
I was a bad student in high school. I was a bad student.
I wasn't a good student. Like academically, I wasn't a decent student. And it's funny because all these skills was technically should be fundamental skills, right? I was learning them in college, and I remember one of the other things that I would do, you would write your notes in like standards. I remember there was always this tip that people would say, never write everything that's on the slides or everything that the teacher or the professor was saying. I did the album. I wrote everything down, bro.
Yeah.
Everything I could, I would write down. And then when I would get home, I would rewrite the notes in my own words. And then after that, I would rewrite them again in bullet points. And I would study all these 3 things at the same time. Sometimes if I was able to, I would record the lectures too.
Yeah.
You know, the audio lectures, and I just kind of listen back to them. But yeah, the identity development of being a student, that happened my first year. And I think that's one of the trickier challenges, because then after that was just more, how do I foster this now? This new identity, how do I foster it, and how do I make it better? And that's when critical thinking happened for me. And that's when I gained curiosity.
Yeah.
Curiosity as far as I want to learn more. Like, I enjoy this now.
Yeah.
Right. Now I know that if I put in the effort, because I saw the fruits of the labor, right?
Yeah.
Now I want to see how much I can accomplish. And then with psychology, just going back to the emotional aspect of it, I think at that point in my life, I was still going through like a lot of things mentally, just understanding, you know, everything that I was going through, like in high school. And I think psychology was able to help me process through a lot of those things, to be honest. Just because a lot of times we feel like what we're going through, we start to feel guilty with the emotions that we feel. Yeah. And then we start to feel like we're irritated all the time, we're angry all the time, and we feel guilty because of those feelings. So it's just kind of like this vicious cycle of emotions that if left unchecked can deal to a lot of unhealthy habits, right? And I think with psychology, it started to really unlock certain things, like just child development. Mm-hmm. You know, I remember taking a child development class and just learning through the stages, the developmental stages of children, you know, infancy to 2 years old, 2 to 5, 5 to 7, you know, adolescence. And it's like, oh crap, like a lot of these feelings that felt icky or weird or like made you feel like you were crazy, because then, you know, with my parents, it was kind of like, it is, you know, raro or no haces caso, and it's like, wait a minute, like tantruming is a normal part of the growing up process for a child, right? Yeah, like that's normal. And so going through the psychology program, it helped me process a lot of things, because that's when I was able to now sit down and think about, wait, this is what I'm going through, and I'm learning about it. I also minored in religious studies, and that also helped me kind of just think about things more objectively.
Yeah, and there's research that shows too, bro, that like students do better in classes where they're learning material that reflects who they are as a person or connects with them. Yeah, you know, because it helps validate what you're experiencing or what you've already gone through. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think that's part of the process of like also helping including the student in the learning process. Like, this is your education. Like, what are you interested in? Yeah. You get me? And how can we better serve you? You know, and I say that because I remember taking a class called Mexican American in the public schools. Yeah. And I was like, this shit really hits home, because like being Mexican American and going to public school system, like there was a professor that was like, who here has taken AP classes? And like, everybody had raised their hand, bro. Yeah. And then like it was okay if you took one AP class, raise your hand. If you took 2 AP classes, raise your hand. And you're at UCLA. There's a lot of seniors who took like their whole schedule that was full
was APs.
My school only offered like 2 AP classes. Yeah. So it was like, and I took one of them. Yeah. You get me? So it let me understand the disparities that exist within public education based on like your zip code and things like that, right? Mm-hmm. But it didn't mean that I was any less of a student. It just means that the challenges I was facing, I have a longer road ahead. But now that I know what challenges I'm facing, I can address them. Yeah. Right? Where it was like, I didn't get to calculus in high school. Yeah. If my major required calculus, I knew how to work on it, you know? But in community college is also where I realized that I enjoyed learning. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember taking a history class, and the professor was just so passionate, very informative, and very relatable in the sense of like the examples of us learning like U.S. history. He made it applicable into certain ways where like we would go over like the wars and stuff like that. He was like, just think of the U.S. as the Crips, think of England as the Bloods, like, and they're trying to fight for the territory that is the 13 colonies. Like, yeah, you get me? And I was like, what? But it makes sense in words that I can understand because of my lived experience. Yeah, you know, and I was like, oh, like, but this all has consequences too into the reality that like I exist in today. Yeah, you know, and that's what helped me connect to it. And I was like, oh, like I actually do enjoy learning, because I wasn't deficient in it. It was just like, if I gave you a test and I was like, here, answer these questions, and you have no collection of what the questions are, like, it's understandable why you wouldn't do well.
Right.
But if you're giving me a book that's telling me, oh, I'm going to make an exam out of the material that's in this book, I'm going to go ahead and read the book, because then now I have a source of information that I can apply to this exam. And that's how I saw it.
I feel like the early days of the SAT, I feel like I read this somewhere, where there was a question on there about like snow and what instruments you would use to navigate the snow. But then you're giving it's a state test, you know, like a standardized test where technically everyone should know this. But if you've never been to the snow, you're not going to know what materials to use to go to the snow. You get me? Like, it's not a lived experience for everybody.
What book are you reading to teach you that, though? You know, like
exactly. And so then how are you expecting? And then the idea is like inner city kids who live in urban areas, like they don't go out to the snow often, right? Yeah. I remember with Diana, she, you know, my partner, she told me one of the first times she ever went to the snow was as an adult. You get me?
Yeah, me too, bro. Yeah.
You see what I mean? So it's like, how can you then give kids a standardized test and then determine their intelligence off of this? You know, and it's not applicable, right, to everyone. And I think just going back to what you were saying, how like history taught you a lot and kind of just started to make you curious about learning. I think psychology did that a lot for me too, because, you know, you take class like abnormal psychology, cognitive psychology, and behavioral psychology, and then you go into like optical illusions and the way that the brain works. I remember one of my favorite classes was like the neuroscience class that I took. It was an earlier class that I took. I think it was my second year. And that one I remember was so awesome because the professor for one of the lessons actually brought an actual human brain to the class. Oh, damn. And we got to see it. And I remember looking at that brain and it was so like simple. Like it just looked like just like a piece of flesh, but the fact that we had spent the whole semester learning about the neurons, the way that the neurons work, the fact that proteins are super important for like sending messages from one neuron to the next neuron, the thresholds of an electrical signal, the way that it needs energy to be able to jump to then the next neuron, and how all of that happens within milliseconds. And then seeing the brain in front of me, and they had 3 different brains, and then they were just kind of cut up in different ways. So you can see like the inside of it. I was like, man, I fucking love this. Yeah. I enjoy this so much, and I want to learn more, because it answers a lot of like our behaviors and how we behave as human beings. Like there's no isolated behavior. Everything has like those an antecedent.
Those classes are interesting, bro, because it encourages you to engage in the class. Like I remember taking a political science class about altruism. Oh, you get me? But there was a game that we were playing. So
a game?
Like, so it's like your grade in the class is based off of points. Yeah. So you're gonna go ahead and answer these surveys, right? And then you'll get a list of where people are in their grades, and it's up to you to award those people points to help increase their grade. You know, so in my head I was like, damn, I see somebody struggling with a D. I was like, let me go ahead and give points. But those points are reduced from your grade.
Oh shit!
So then it was measuring the altruism of people, right? Yeah. And then at the end you'll get a result of how many people gave away points. Oh shit! So then you had like that peak that behind the curtain of like, okay, let's see who's actually giving away. But I was like one of 5 people out of a class of 35 giving away points. Wow. I was like, what the hell? Like
that's crazy.
So then it kind of shifted how I saw things too. Yeah. But I was really engaged in that class because I was like, like if I can still maintain an A from like the 100 to like the 91%, like that's my threshold of let me give away points, because I realized that not everybody was doing that, but I was able to calculate what within myself I was willing to sacrifice, you know.
And it makes you think like just politically how, and it's funny. I think that's why me and you, like what you were saying earlier, because we merged the political science and the psychology aspect, because psychology has a lot to do with that too.
Yeah, like, and I remember because my concentration was in international relations, and I had a professor who was just so dope, where we studied like international conflict and like geopolitics, and he was like, just think of a country as a person, right? Is represented by the leader that they elect or the leader that appoints themselves based on what type of government that they have, right? But then that psychology of the person determines the psychology of how they engage in the global world, right? So when you have like a quote unquote dictator that has an authoritarian rule over everything, like any action that they do take does send a signal into like the global world, you know. So that's why it's important to understand how we approach it. Yeah. Right. Like, yes, we have a democracy, this and that, but who we elect as a leader can be much more hawkish or like how they approach international policy. Right. Yeah. So I was like, oh, like, but you can get a glimpse of that off the candidate that you elect. And that's where I was able to connect like the psychology of the candidate who then is now the president and how that shifts U.S. policy. Right. And during the election cycle, you're able to get a glimpse of that because they're telling you what they want to do, how they're going to do it, or like how they're going to approach it. And that's why I was like, okay, like it's like people arguing, you know, like, and you get to see it. Yeah. You know, I was like,
one of the things I remember there was a study that we talked about in one of my classes. I remember being in behavioral psychology and we were studying conditioning and, you know, and operant conditioning and classical conditioning. But just like on a separate note, I remember there was a study that really opened my eyes to how behaviors are really determined by your environment, right? Yeah. And I remember there was a study where they were talking about that they invited a bunch of, I think there were priests to a seminar. And that's the study. They invite a bunch of priests to a college campus to be a part of this seminar. And so there were obviously two conditions. One of the conditions, they would tell the priest, all right, this is where the seminar is going to be. Here's the location, right? And then they would give them a time to arrive by. And so then the two conditions was the first condition, they would have the priest show up to this building and then there would be a sign on there. And the sign would say, unfortunately, the seminar had to be relocated. It's now across campus. And here's where the two conditions were. The first condition was, don't worry, there's enough time to make it. There's 30 minutes. You have more than enough time to get there. Cool. The other condition said, same thing, unfortunately, had to be relocated. And on another note, the seminar's starting now. So you please get there as quickly as possible. And so obviously there's a feeling of anxiety, like you have to hurry, right, for that condition. And along the way in the path, they put a person there that was asking for money or for help. And mind you, they're all priests, right? Yeah. And so the people in the condition who had enough time to get across campus oftentimes would, actually stop and help the person who was there. And I think they were just asking for like food, like, oh, like I'm really hungry. Can you help me? Right. They would place, it was a plant basically. And the people who had time to make it across campus, they would actually stop, talk to the person. Oh, this is what I have and give it to you. But the people who were in the condition that said there's not enough time, you have to make it across campus, oftentimes did not stop to help that person. Yeah. And they were all priests. And the idea is that it really, like in that moment, it's like just because they're priests doesn't mean they're all good, right? Yeah. And it's an altruist, and I think that's probably why it piqued my memory, because the idea would be like, you would think every priest would stop and help that person. Have you seen that thing that's going on viral where that girl's calling like a bunch of churches?
Oh, to see who would donate food?
Yeah, she has like a 2-month-old and seeing who would donate formula, and that 29 didn't.
I saw like one clip, yeah.
And then 6 churches said yes, they would. So it's like, that's what helped me realize, like, man, like all of this is so fluid. Behaviors are really dependent upon like the environment, not just the environment, but your genetics and just so many things. And that's what really started to pique my interest and curiosity and learning and wanting to do more.
No, yeah. And
it helps with empathy too, bro. Like,
and it goes back to like how societal conditions encourage or discourage certain behaviors, and as but then like the question was like, regarding altruism though, like in that class, there was also like, how do you feel when giving back? Right. So like another part of the research question was like, are you really altruistic, or is it what's that word? Or is it selfish thing to you to want to give something because it makes you feel good? Yeah. You get me? So like regarding altruism, ¿te nace del corazón, or are you doing it because now you feel like you're a good person?
Well, they say people who just recently leave church are more likely to engage in altruistic behaviors immediately after church, but then it kind of tapers off.
It's probably because they feel guilty though, right?
Right in the moment, because you're there at church and that's all they're talking about. So right immediately after, people are more likely to have altruistic behaviors, and they kind of just tapers off until the next Sunday. You get me? But then it's like, yeah, you're right. Then the question is, well, ¿te nace el corazón, or are you just feeling guilty because you were just at church and the pastor or the priest just spent a whole hour just telling you how no one's altruistic and you got to be more altruistic, right?
Yeah, which regardless, I think if you're both helping, like, it's still fine, you know. But I think it helps you understand, like, your intentionality,
and that's the point. Like, it's not to like judge anything or anyone, but just to understand. Oh, this is how behaviors work. Yeah, right.
And how they can be modified, encouraged, discouraged.
100%.
You know, and that class, I was like, damn, like. You know, because I come from like a collective culture where I was like, okay, like if you have something to give, like,
just give it,
just give it, you know, like. But I was giving away points, bro. My grade was decreasing. I was like, man, like these people don't care about me, like, you know. But because I was able to see data, and like, oh yeah, they're not approaching it like how I am.
There was another one, and you know, we're coming up on the hour, but just there was another one, where they just try to see how likely people were to throw away their trash, and they intentionally put the trash can across the hallway, so it was in an inconvenient place. That's where they placed the trash can, just to see if people would be willing to go over there. And there was 2 conditions. The first condition was there was a sign that said, "Please throw your trash away at the end of the hallway where the trash can is." And then the other condition was the statement just said, "We understand that the trash can is far, but please put your trash in the trash can," right? And so in that condition, people were more likely to walk down the hallway and throw their trash there versus the other one that just said, throw your trash in the trash can down the hallway, right? And that would make sense. Like, people just like to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
People just
makes it more personal.
Yeah.
Like, I understand it's an inconvenience, but
so it's not the task itself. It's just more like, well, I'm not going to fucking do that. Then no one cares, you get me? But it's like, yeah, but if there's just even just one little statement of, hey, I understand it's far, but do you mind? Yeah, then they'll do it. And then you just like live your life that way, right? I think one other thing is just that helped me was always assume that person is just having the worst day of their life.
Yeah.
You know, and then just going about it that way, right?
Oh, yeah, and that's something that my mom taught us too, where like she was like when you're able to help like the less fortunate, like she says that like es fácil caer en la situación de uno así. Like, it's so easy to end up there. Like, you're only one mistake away from like from being in that position. Yeah, you know, and it's just so it shouldn't hurt you to give away something that is replaceable in your situation. Yeah, you know, and that's how I try to view stuff. I was like, okay, like, I remember I'm able to today. Yeah, there was an image that I remember in one of my psychology classes, the professor showed us, and it was basically just like this really packed freeway, and there was a junction, right? So obviously it's one freeway, and then off to the left was the entrance to a different freeway, and the image was of a car kind of just merging from one lane over to the other one to try and make it to that freeway, because I guess they missed it. And so the professor asked, like, how would you guys feel if you were the car that got cut off by that driver? So, yeah, sure enough, everyone, you know, raising their hands like, oh, I'll be mad. I'd be furious. What a stupid ass and this and that. And then the professor said, okay, what if that person just got a call that their child was in the hospital because of an accident and they had to, and now everyone felt bad. Like, oh, well, yeah, go ahead, bro. Like, yeah. But it really is like this thing where if you just assume, or it's kind of like this thing they do in therapy too, where just pretend that person who got you angry, just pretend in your mind, just tell yourself, what if that person is just having the worst day of their life? Yeah. Right. And then it almost like it's just their own mind. They could just be an asshole. You get me? But it shouldn't mean that now your day is ruined. Yeah, like because of this one interaction, right? And I think that kind of just shows to like the level of range that we can have towards understanding like one another. Yeah, because like it's emotional regulation. Yeah, like having work fast food. Whenever I find myself like in a restaurant experience, like I'm patient, and you're tested over and over and over again. Yeah, and eventually your patience is gonna be, it's gonna run thin, you know. But I'm patient, understanding of the sense where it's like, oh, it's just a busy day. Yeah, and I'm not gonna find myself like oh, they're taking forever, blah blah blah.
And people are probably not gonna do that for you. Like, oh, you know what? He's a cashier. He's probably I'm probably like their 50th customer today, and it's like people are not gonna do that for you. And I think that's where like the regulation comes from, being able to do it on a constant basis.
So it keeps me like informed because I've been in that position where like I'm more understanding of not being served soon or not being acknowledged yet, like because I understand that it gets busy, that there's stuff going on, and things like that. Or even when they mess up the order, like I'll bring it up, but I wouldn't be a dick about it. Yeah, because I've seen people be a dick about it to me when I was just a cashier. I was like, I wasn't a cook, bro. Like I put your order right. Like,
and it goes back to that statement where like I understand that the trash can is down the hallway, but if you don't mind, and sometimes those little things were like, man, you guys are busy today, you know. Let me make this quick or whatever, you know, whatever it is. Yeah. Just to like the little statements of like, I acknowledge that you're probably going through a lot right now.
Because then at that point it's like, let me make sure my order is ready to go. Yeah. I'm ready to order when they do come. Because now I have that time to decide what I want. But if I'm upset that they're taking long to come ask me for my food, and then when they do come, how may I help you? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, let me take a look at the menu. It's like what?
You had all this time to think about it.
Why are you upset, bro? Like when you still needed more time. Like
for sure.
You know, so I think it's just understanding that like you can increase your range of understanding and empathy, you know, by probably experiencing it or probably just asking yourself like, how would I be in that situation?
Yeah. And I think going back to, you know, just to close off, the original, and we're still coming up with the mission and vision, but just kind of like the original, the way we brought up Caile Gueyyy and what our idea was, which is that to learn from people, right? And to ask questions and to see where they're at in life and where they're going, right? What are their goals and what have they learned up until this point? So hopefully maybe we can learn something. And then if this podcast makes it to, you know, a bunch of people, maybe they can learn something.
Yeah. And I think that's part of what we want to push out there, right? Like, because I think, again, we can learn from one another, but it's reciprocal, like you said. Yeah. It really is reciprocal, right? Because someone might mention something that might challenge their own ideals, you know, but it allows us to go back, not to the drawing board, but to like, okay, like, let me go ahead and engage in this discussion, you know, because we're not always going to agree with everybody, but I think that also acknowledges that we're not always going to be right either. Yeah. And I think that's part of like the learning process, you know, it's like, okay, well, like we have the capacity to learn to like our dying day, bro.
That's a growth mindset.
Yeah. You know, I'm a big believer in a growth mindset.
I think so too.
You know, and I think, but it's part of those classes that I took, right? Like the psychology, the lifespan development, and child development, because you're able to develop until your dying day, bro. And I think it allows us to not see ourselves as fixed. You're right. Having fixed traits, but having the capacity to grow and develop. And I think Caile Gueyyy is about that, right? Because everyone's going to have a different experience, you know, but I think there's also beauty in understanding that we're different, but we're all in this together because we're experiencing the world like at the same time, you know, and how they might go about it might be a different way, but it can also be a way that can help us, or how we go about it might be a way that can help them at that moment. So
yeah, for sure. And I think just recently over the past couple of weeks, just as far in just the political climate, and I remember seeing some messages, comments and stuff about like this blue wave happening.
Oh yeah, recently,
yeah, just like with Mamdani, Prop 50, you know, getting passed. The two governors, I forgot what states it was.
Virginia,
and the other, I can't remember.
New Mexico.
But there was like this, I don't know if I want to call it this ease, but like this calm of like, okay, you know what?
No, because I feel
like it just.
I feel like it was easier to breathe.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, okay, so there, because then you don't feel crazy, right? And it's like, okay, there are other like-minded people who believe in the things that I believe in. Yeah. Right. And it just felt like this calm, like, okay, relief, maybe, you know, desahogar, right?
And I think that's what's important, at least for me personally. Like, it might be a little dark, right? But it's also like, it feels good to know that someone else is going through something similar, because I acknowledge now that I'm not alone. Yeah. And not even that I take joy in what they're going through, but it's like now you and I have that commonality, and how can we help each other? Right. That's where I'm like at with that.
And even if someone's not going through those struggles, the fact that they acknowledge the struggles of those who are going through, and they're allies, you know what I mean? Like that just like that community. I guess maybe that's what I felt like, a sense of community. Okay, there's community.
Yeah, because
and it's still alive and well.
The other thing too is like I was telling my partner the other day, where it's like you don't have to understand everything,
right?
But just acknowledging that, like, I don't understand it, but can you help me with that?
Yeah,
I think that's how you build community with people, where it's like, because I met people that don't understand like the experience, right, of like coming from like a mixed status family, and like I'm not gonna shut you off because of that, like, but if you're willing to engage and learn about how it is to come from a mixed status family, is like you're there to support. You're not there to like harm me or anything, so. And I think that kind of just goes to show that like we do got to listen to one another to understand where we're coming from, but be reciprocal and have that open mindset of like, I just never considered that. But now that I've talked to you, like, I'm able to go back and be like, oh, damn, like, it might have been a little selfish of me to not have considered how it affects others besides me. And I think that's where we are. Yeah. In a lot of situations currently, right, where a lot of people with the current administration, well, I didn't expect he was actually going to do this. It was like,
it's like he said he was going to do all this, and now he's saying they're not going hard enough. He's like, I want ICE to like go harder. Like,
but it also highlights how one issue was one you're willing to forego because you felt protected or isolated from that. But now that it does impact you and that it is at your door, it's like, right? Like, I understand what you're going through, but are you now in a position to understand that the issues you ignored earlier are real too to other people? Yeah. And I think it just leads us to that space of discussion, but also connecting with one another.
I'm looking forward to our next guest. I'm not going to say it just because we're still working out the schedule and stuff, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting. Stay tuned, guys. Yeah, stay tuned. But I think our next guest is going to be really interesting. Yeah. I look forward to having them on.
Stay tuned, y'all. And I think if you guys have any suggestions of any topics or any guests that you guys would like to have on Caile Gueyyy, like, let us know on Instagram. Yeah. Send us a DM or send us a comment on the episode when it drops.
We're in the Inland Empire, so if you're LA based, just sorry in advance.
Yeah, sorry in advance, but pull up though. You're still invited. All right, then thank you for tuning in, y'all.
Peace out.
Peace out.